Environmental considerations toward a sustainable future.
It is early morning on a farm in South America, where a local family has already started their daily chores. Gloria is gathering water for the day's cooking and cleaning, while her father Manuel heads to the fields to continue the season's harvest. Later, he will take his crops to the local market down the road. The profits from these sales help him support his family.
This scene looked very different a few years ago. Before a water project, Gloria had to walk over 2 miles to a contaminated river to collect drinking water. Another project helped the family increase their harvest. Manuel struggled to get his produce to market until the road he used was improved.
Part of why the projects in Gloria and Manuel's community were successful is because they considered the environmental impacts of their activities beforehand and took steps to reduce or avoid them. However, some development projects may cause environmental impacts that are unforeseen or not addressed in project design.
But shouldn't we be more worried about helping families like this one than conserving the environment? Why should we think about the environmental impacts of development projects?
Some people might answer, it's the law. In most countries, that is true. In USAID's case, U.S. Regulation 216 requires an analysis of environmental impacts before any funding goes to support a project.
We can make the greatest positive impact by designing sound programs that maximize the limited funds for development work.
But these are not the only reasons. The communities we work with rely heavily on their natural environment to provide for their basic needs. Negative environmental impacts cause negative impacts on the community as a whole.
A thorough environmental analysis will help ensure your project success by maximizing benefits to local communities. Project design should always adapt to local conditions, and one of the best ways to do this is to involve the local communities affected by the project in the project design.
So, the purpose of environmental regulations is not to interfere with development, but rather to encourage sound programs that benefit communities in the long term.
I think that as a foreign assistance agency, we need to be responsible for how our resources are being used in a way that is sensitive to the environment as well as to the people. And so up front in the design and implementation and as well as the regular monitoring of programs, we need to have environmental considerations up front and be sure that whatever we do and whatever we support is not affecting the environment negatively. We have the responsibility for the country in which we're working with, the people we're working with, but as well as globally.
Now let's take a look at 3 case studies that show how poor environmental management can lead to project failure, while on the other hand, using environmentally sound strategies helps assure project success. The case studies will address 3 key development sectors: water and sanitation, road infrastructure, and agriculture.
Water and sanitation. Access to clean water and sanitation services is a basic human need. Water and sanitation projects can greatly improve a community's health and quality of life. Environmentally sound practices are crucial in water and sanitation projects. If these practices are not used, what problems can result?
Changes in the ecosystems and habitat, like the loss of vegetation or wetlands, diminish the community's water supply, so a water source, like a well, may not be able to provide water year-round. Also, contaminated water can lead to greater illness and water-related infectious disease.
I think the prominent problem, it will be the use of wastewater.
What do these impacts look like in a real project? In a West African orphanage that serves over 100 children, a latrine project was implemented. However, because environmentally sound practices were not used in project design, the latrines were poorly placed.
Due to the lack of good drainage structures, the latrines flooded and increased the risk of water-related infection. As a result, the children were exposed to more health risks with the latrines than without them.
Correcting these problems was time-consuming and costly for the orphanage, much more costly than it would have been to properly locate the latrines with a drainage system at the beginning.
To avoid this outcome, what best practices should a water and sanitation project use? In designing a strategy, it is critical to integrate water supply, sanitation, and hygiene campaigns. This helps prevent disease transmission and improves public health, which is the ultimate goal of water supply and sanitation projects.
Community involvement in design, maintenance, and cost sharing is necessary to develop a project that is appropriate to scale and capacity. Technical planning and water testing should also be included in the design phase.
After a project is completed, communities and project managers should test the water periodically to determine whether water sources have become contaminated so that corrective measures can be taken.
This example shows that a small investment in environmental mitigation measures at the beginning of a project can reduce the risk of project failure and the need for costly and time-consuming corrective measures. Road infrastructure.
As with water and sanitation projects, environmentally sound practices are vital in road construction and rehabilitation.
Good roads are important to the well-being of communities because they provide easier access to markets, products, and health services, especially for people living in rural areas.
However, there is also a risk of failure in road projects. What are some possible adverse impacts of a road project?
One concern is soil and road surface erosion, which increases maintenance costs and clogs drainage structures, causing flooding and road washout in some cases. The road can become impassable and isolate communities.
Another adverse impact is deforestation and the loss of native animal and plant species.
Road projects also affect communities because of increased interchange. They can cause rapid social and economic changes that alter community values and norms.
One project in the Caribbean shows the importance of taking environmental considerations into account in road projects. During the design phase of the project, planners did not consider the potential for unstable soils in road placement and did not install erosion control measures or a drainage system. The result? A 40-meter section of road collapsed within the first year of service.
What environmentally sound practices should have been included in project design to prevent this washout? Project planners should carefully consider road placement with community participation to minimize both environmental and social impacts. Plus, future transport demand should be considered to avoid overburden of the road. Road crews should construct drainage and soil erosion control measures. The project should also develop a strategy for community participation in long-term road maintenance.
Including environmentally sound practices in the design, implementation, and monitoring of road projects increases the probability of successful, sustainable results.
Before we had the road, our cassava gardens here hadn't any price because we don't normally get people to come and buy for us, and the agricultural products hadn't any price. But with the habilitation of this road now, we can take our goods or our cassava product to the market and we determine the cost of our cassava.
Agriculture. Sustainable agricultural systems are vital to rural community livelihoods. Environmental considerations are critical in agricultural projects because agricultural systems essentially depend on productive soils and clean water.
What are some potential adverse impacts of an agricultural project that does not follow environmental regulations?
If the project is poorly designed, there can be negative consequences like soil erosion, loss of soil fertility, water contamination, and deforestation. In turn, crop productivity suffers and farmer sales are reduced in both local and international markets.
Also, poor agricultural practices can lead to worsening health and nutritional problems. This seriously affects more vulnerable population groups like women and children.
However, these problems can be minimized by conducting a thorough environmental analysis during project design and taking preventative actions. A project in Central America designed with good agricultural and environmental practices demonstrates this point. In this project, planners included soil and water conservation measures like cover cropping and water harvesting.
Pests were controlled through an integrated pest management strategy, which uses both cultural and manual pest control measures to reduce chemical use. When chemicals were needed, farm workers were trained on safer pesticide practices, and personal protective equipment was provided.
These best practices helped the program achieve improvements in pesticide safety and more sustainable production systems. For families in the program, this meant an average 300% yield increase at harvest and up to a 700% net increase in income.
Porque el margen de rentabilidad de esto es tan alto, nosotros estamos gastando, póngale, $200 y estamos sacando casi $2,000.
So, it is clear that a thoughtfully designed project that follows environmental regulations can achieve a high degree of success.
These 3 case studies show the global importance of identifying the possible environmental impacts of development work and taking steps to reduce them in project design, implementation, and follow-up.
Since the vast majority of development projects have some environmental impact, projects can and should incorporate environmental considerations effectively. Although environmental experts have an important role in many types of assessment, non-experts can also make essential contributions. Interdisciplinary teams can help identify best practices by addressing the social, economic, and environmental consequences of USAID-supported activities.
Community involvement in project design and implementation is also critical. Project design should always adapt to the local conditions, and community members should have a significant role in determining what these conditions are and how the activities are carried out.
AID is not about doing development to people, we're about doing development with people. Civil society, democracy, governance, these are very core issues, and environmental impact assessment is one of the most primary ways that you can get at this. It's practical civil society, it's not just talking, it's actually doing.
Understanding and following environmental procedures and guidelines will help generate sustainable livelihoods and safeguard the health of vulnerable populations.
It will also increase economic competitiveness and food security, and enhance the quality of life within households, communities, and nations where USAID operates.
It's very unfortunate, that people that live around here, will have to use a well of this type, given the close proximity of the well, for the latrine. And apart from being exposed by the latrine, you can also see, it's located down the hill, it's sloping. You have 3 slopes running down, one on your left, one on the right, one in the middle. All of them, collecting just into the latrine, into the well. It's very, very terrible. I think they should discontinue. It doesn't serve, any good health purpose at all.
Uno de los objetivos fundamentales de AID es fomentar el crecimiento económico en los países en desarrollo, pero es crítico y fundamental las consideraciones ambientales para asegurar un desarrollo económico sostenible.